Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Groover. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey, everybody, welcome back.
Yes, it's not just me.
Because I was saying it, it was like, hello. I'm your co-host, Kathy Groover, and this is the Fire and Earth podcast.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And we're laughing because the last, 5 or 6 episodes that we've recorded,
We're fucking it up.
I know we've recorded like 300 podcast episodes together or something like that. And we always have this like pat way that we kind of start and end them. And neither one of us have been able to do it with a straight face or in the right way.
I was burping. And I knew if I waited to burp and then talk, you would think I forgot to start. So I thought I'd start and just see where the burp took me. And it blocked my airway and I couldn't get the word out.
Okay.
And then it also interrupted the burp. So now I've got a burp sitting like,
oh no. Well, let it rip. Let it rip when it needs to.
It'll come out.
Okay. Well, anyway, today we were going to talk about simplicity and keeping it simple, right?
Boy, did we screw that up.
Oh, well.
We've already complicated things. Why do we do that? Why do humans, it just seems like the natural way of things. I have asked people to do some of the simplest things in the world, and they have turned it into this complex, like multi-stage thing. And I'm like, I just needed you to send an email real quick. Is that the natural penchant? I mean, do humans complicate things on purpose? Is this the way? I want wisdom, Jason. I want you to tell me what you think.
Well, I think it probably some of it is just from a belief structure that we're taught as humans. I don't think little babies think things need to be complicated. But as we grow, we're kind of told like, well, there's certain steps that you have to do and you have to do things this way, right? And so I think we start getting into that. And I don't know if it's because I've seen this too, especially with things like spiritual practices that are very simple, but they're so simple and so powerful that people don't want to do them because they're so simple. Right. They're like, no, I need some complexity. Give me a 24-step, process to do it, and it's like, one of them that I do is blessing the water, right? That I was taught. And it's like, it's one of the simplest things. It takes a second or two.
Yeah.
As I'm pouring my water, I say, I bless this water. Right. And I remember my mentor, kind of talking about it. He's like, it's so simple, but people are like, well, but what do I have to say? He's like, you just say, I bless this water. You don't even have to say it out loud. It's just like, he's like, but people,
because that would be weird.
People want.
You're in the mall and you're like, I bless this water, and everyone's like, okay,
okay, bye bye. But he's like, people want some thing to say. They want like 5 steps of how to do it right, and we're so concerned about doing it right.
Right.
And following the right steps that we don't just do the simple things. So yeah, it's an interesting conundrum that we get in as humans on why we choose to overcomplicate things.
Right. We need to make, this is probably way too much information. We need to make 2 simple bylaw changes on the board that I'm on. 2. I can tell you literally in 30 seconds what these bylaws need to say. It's not, well, we've got a committee and the committee is picking committee members and they're going to review it and they're going to take it to the members and and I'm sitting there in this meeting going, guys, stop. You're making this way too complicated. We are not reviewing all of the bylaws, which would be, let's get a team together. I can literally type it in the next 30 seconds what the bylaw has to say. It's really simple. And they have made it this complicated thing. And then I said, guys, you're way overthinking. Like, you're really making this so much bigger than it needs to be. And so the one guy goes, okay, well, let's make it the Groover rule. Keep it simple, stupid. And I went, yeah. I mean, it's like they've blown this thing so out of proportion of what it needs to be. And it's just fascinating to me because I'm sitting back and going, you're making work for yourselves. I remember my ex and I did a haunted house one year. We wanted to do so that you would walk through and you do certain things. And we asked friends of ours, hey, could you set up a wire? We had this horrible skeleton with this giant head. It was terrifying. And we just wanted it to slide down this line. It was sloped. All you had to do is have someone let it go and it would slide. They brought over tools and levels and pulleys and compute. I mean, like they made this thing so complicated and then it didn't work. They wanted to be able to push a button and this thing would release and the bar thing would, I'm like, we just want just put up a line, and it never worked. And finally they had to tear out all this stuff and they just put in a wire so that someone could release the thing and it would fly down the line. And
which you already had.
Which is what we wanted in the first place. And it's like days were going, seasons are, Halloween's over. It's now Thanksgiving and they're still futzing with the skeleton. We're just hilarious. And it's like, I think so often people think to add value, to make them feel like they're doing something, they have to make stuff more complicated and bigger than it has to be.
Well, yeah, I think there is kind of that leaving your mark. I kind of, from a leadership perspective, talk about it like a dog marking its territory, to where some leaders just feel like they have to piss on things and mark it as their own, and have to change something, even if something doesn't have to be changed.
Right.
So they leave their mark on it and they show that they've done something important, right. From it. And so I think sometimes there's that aspect. But another one that came to me as you were talking too is, I think sometimes because life can be so simple.
Yeah.
But if we make it simple, it means we actually have to do something about it. I think sometimes we choose to make things complicated so we can never actually get to the doing whatever it is that we have to do. So like in your instance there with the bylaws, right? It's like there's people on the board who don't want to just type out the couple of things and actually vote on it, right? Because they don't want to have to take a stand. They don't want to have to vote on it. And so what do? You create a committee. All right. And there's an old joke in politics, if you want to kill something, what do? You put it into a committee.
Well, we know we have to do this.
It'll never make it out. Right. And so again, it's one of those things where it's like, you got to do it. Just somebody type it up and, vote. That's it. It can be done, like you said, in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And yes, you can futz over the wording a little bit, but if it's only two lines kind of a thing, it isn't going to take that long if people actually want to get it done.
Right.
But well, I think we don't want to get things done sometimes.
That's a good point. And this is actually the opposite. This was expressed in a meeting where one person who was trying to be the hero stood up and said, bring it to me, I'll put a committee together and we'll do it. And it was him talking out of turn. And you could see all the rest of the board kind of going, because it didn't need to be that way. It didn't need to be that way. And he was trying to please the membership, whatever the whole thing was. But it's like, it was one person that kind of got a little bravado-y and went, I'll fix it and I'll put a committee together and come to me. And it's like, oh, fuck. So that's what happened with all this. It was coming from a place of good. Mm-hmm. He's newer on this board and didn't realize that that's not how we do this. Mm-hmm. He wasn't following. And because he then announced to everybody that he was going to do it, we all went, all right, I guess we have to do it. So yeah, it was a thing. So why are we complicating things? Look at the simplest way first. I mean, try the simplest thing. And I was just reading, oh my God, what was I just reading this morning? It was an article about, God, I don't even know, but it was this sort of this axiom sort of thing. Oh, I was reading an article about COVID and where it actually came from. And they had quoted something, it was something's razor, sort of like
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor. It was like the simplest thing is probably the answer. Mm-hmm. I had never heard of that before. So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It was like the cat in the box.
Schrodinger's cat.
That's him.
Yeah.
There's a cat with a razor in a box. Is he shaving? Is he killing himself? We don't know. We'll have to open the box and find out.
That would add an extra little layer to that dilemma, doesn't it? But no, I think it's and I have in a way been on a little crusade to simplify my life for a while. right? Getting rid of bills that I don't need, getting rid of things that I don't necessarily need. I think one of the previous ones we just talked about, you had made that list for yourself of all the different things you were doing and why you felt burned out, right? And you were going through and kind of simplifying too, of saying,
Yep.
look, I'm not going to do 25 things. I'm going to do 5, or I'm going to do 10.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just start cutting it back. And I think it's, life can really be simple if you want it to be. You just have to want it to be that way. You have
Yeah.
to adapt, right? And change maybe what you're doing to make things more simple. But we can really accomplish a lot more the simpler we make things, and we don't expend as much energy either.
Right.
Right? Because I think
Yep.
that's one of the reasons too why we feel so burned out sometimes, is because we're just doing. And it's
Too
like,
much.
I mean, even like for me, right? I do three podcasts, right? Two with co-hosts and one by myself. And there would get to be times where it's like I just couldn't find the time or bring myself to it, or I don't know what, but I
Mm-hmm.
was having a hard time recording original episodes on my solo podcast.
Yeah.
And finally I looked at it and I'm like, just a minute, I've got 300 or 400 episodes from these other two co-hosted ones that have never aired on my own.
Yeah.
If I can't, get to it, I could simplify it and try to reuse some of the things that I'm already doing, right? And I was talking to somebody about this yesterday on social media. It's like you can post the same thing 10 different times over the course of a month or two.
Yep.
The same thing with a different picture.
Yep.
And nobody's going to know the difference because most of the people never saw it the other 9 times.
Right.
Right. And so that's a simple way of making things simpler, but you have to switch your belief
Yeah.
on that too, and allow and say, well, it really is okay to do that. I don't have to create 10 separate, completely new posts, right? In fact, one of the ways I've simplified a lot of the marketing in one of my businesses is I've come up with like 50 different quote card ad kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
and I reschedule them so they run
Yeah.
every 50 days. So again, it's like people see the same thing, but it's after 50 days, which is 2.5 months, right? They're not even, or almost 2 months. They're not even going to remember
No.
that they saw it before.
Didn't he post that before? That looks familiar. No, it said no one. I mean, no one's paying
Yeah.
that close attention. Yeah. Yeah. So, this has been great. Yeah. So simplify. Look at the quickest, easiest way first. And then if that's not going to work, then you can start to add layers, but don't start with the most complicated thing and then try to chunk it down. Start with the simple is best. Keep it the Groover rule. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Because honestly, if you can't explain things simply, too, you don't understand them, right? And so this has been, I can't remember who it was that said that. I want to say it was Einstein, but it might not have been. But that
sure.
if you can't explain something simply, you don't really understand it.
Right.
And it's the same thing with how we're doing it, right? If we really understand how to do something right, probably the simplest way is the best way.
Yeah. Simple is best. All right. I am Kathy Groover. I can be reached at kathygroover.coach.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, have a great week. Simplify. Just find one thing this week that you can do to make your life a little bit simpler. And we will see you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.
See ya.